Just waiting for it to connect.
Shameless
Oh,
plug.
RJ, I need a background, a cool one like you.
Yeah, shameless plug right here.
Reppin' revolutionary
Mhm.
jargon. What's
Smart.
going on, everybody? Welcome to Frank Analysis. I'm your host, Franco. I'm happy to be joined here by my friends. We're going to talk about so many issues. Nina Turner, Naftali Bennett. Was Trump the most racist president of all time? Like how a lot of mainstream media and a lot of people on the left make it out to be. We're going to dive all that here today. But first, I'm going to introduce the panel here. We have Sabby Sab, Sabrina. Thank you very much for being here. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Franco.
Yeah, I'm glad to see the growth in your channel recently. You've got a big boost.
Thank you.
Yeah. And we got RJ. What's going on, brother?
I'm doing great. It's great to be back on with you, man.
And we have Marcus Cage. It's always great to have you on, brother. I always learn so much about history with you.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm always glad to be on here. It's always fun conversations and I always get to meet a bunch of cool people. So nice to meet Sabrina and nice to meet RJ also. And looking forward to a fun conversation.
So right off the top, I just want to like go around the table here. Do you guys have hope in Nina Turner, or have you just like given up on like having any hope for like these anybody who's running like in for Congress as like as a progressive? Do you think that she's just gonna join hashtag Tweet Squad and just like tweet all day? What are your guys' thoughts? Let's start with Sabrina. What do you think?
Oh man, this is tough because I like Nina. Um, she was really powerful for Bernie's campaign, but I just don't have faith in electoral politics anymore. I was disappointed by the way the DNC, and the media treated Bernie twice. And then I saw, how the squad was, how they didn't force the vote, and they're not really using they're not using like each other as leverage like they could. I saw them like, decide to give more money to Capitol Police, like three of them voting present when that was a moment when they actually could have implemented change and they decided not to. So I just don't have faith in electoral politics. So regardless if it's Nina or anyone else, I'd still feel the same. I just feel like once people get in DC, they just kind of fall into the mold.
In the same boat. What about you, RJ?
Me on this instance, I'm pretty sure she'll do well for her district, but since it's heavily blue, liberal, black liberals too there, so she'll do fine there. But in terms of the national picture and her involvement federally, I don't really see it. I mean, she could easily be the leader of the squad if she wants to, because she is the OG. But I'm not really sure how she's going to actually force the squad to actually do things more progressive like they should, because in the end, look at the endorsement she's been getting.
Oh
A lot
yeah,
of
we're
these
getting to that.
mainline Democrats. So, in terms of electoral politics, the only faith I have in it is city-wide in terms of the city councils. The smaller you go, the more local you go, the more connection you have to the people. But as soon as you start going like statewide or federal, that's when you can really start to lose those deep root connections. So that's my answer.
Yeah. Marcus, what do you think?
I mean, I honestly would echo both of their sentiments. On the national level, if you can't see how many roadblocks and stumbling blocks there are, I mean, just think about it. They literally spend majority of their time raising money. So if you're there spending most of your time raising money, and even if you get elected, you're going to instantly have to start raising money. How much time are you spending on actually trying to get anything legislatively done? I mean, just looking at the simple math of it, if you're not already coming out the gate with saying, here's my legislation plan, here's what I want to do day one, and she hasn't done that. She's talked about what she supported, and it's fine to support things. I mean, we all support all kind of things, and sometimes, what we support goes somewhere, sometimes it doesn't. No mistake, what RJ was saying, that she would probably be the head of the squad. She definitely would be the head of the squad because she already has more of a, I guess, a charismatic personality that stands out. And so she would already take that attention. But what would she do with it? That's the problem. I don't see anybody. I mean, the squad can have another 15, 20, and we're still going to be dealing with these same kind of situations. The only thing that's going to be different in those situations is the bill will be much more watered down. So on the 50-50 times when they have to let it go through, it'll pass, but you're still not getting anything.
I can definitely see her being the leader, but yeah, like how you guys were saying, like where would that like even lead to? Like we're seeing like the lackluster pressure, if there's even there's like no pressure at all actually, like from the squad. Like I feel like these corporate Democrats are more effective than them in forcing the vote on the things that they want. Like didn't Schumer come out recently and he was forcing the vote on something? But I think what really hit the nail on the head is this tweet here by our brother Unapologetic. So I'm going to play this video that he shared, and he said, some don't want to hear it. And yeah, it's a really harsh truth, but we can't afford to have people waste so much energy fighting tooth and nail to get these people elected, only to be disappointed when these people come into office. But Nina Turner, he goes on to say, will go to Congress and turn into a regular incrementalism loving, status quo defending Democrat. It's absurd to spend more time browbeating people with no health care than criticizing politicians who ran on Medicare for all but opposed floor votes. So I'm going to adjust the audio here so that you guys can hear it, and we can hear I'll hear what your thoughts are on what she says here.
It's okay to be disappointed, but the squad is ultimately the best that we have in terms of being able to push an agenda. And what that means is that you might not always agree with the methods. I need people to understand that when you are on the inside, it doesn't mean that you are selling out. I know they've gotten a lot of pressure, but they are the ones up there holding it down. They're pushing as hard as they can. And just because things are not going exactly the way, just because they're not using the exact tactics that some in the activist community want them to use, that doesn't mean that you throw them away. Because guess what? If you're throwing away members of the squad who are our best opportunity to get what we need, and also some members of that progressive caucus, then you're not going to have anybody there. So if the prerequisite, in summation, if the prerequisite for relationship means that I have to do, or the squad has to do everything you say, the way you say do it, then there's not much of a relationship at all. And that you're going to be disappointed. Hell, they're going to be disappointed with me. I said that to Tim Black when we interviewed. I'm saying it to you, Mike. I want them to know you're going to be disappointed at some point. But that does not mean that you give up totally on the people who are the best fighting chance that you have. And then there's something called strategy. So the grassroots strategy is different than the strategy once you are on the inside. You will know when somebody is sold out. And I assure you that the squad has not, underline, bold, underscore, sold out in any way. They need the grassroots. You can hold them accountable, but you don't throw them away. I mean, some of the pressures, even with Congresswoman Cori Bush, I just want to use her as the example. I mean, she just got there. Hell, overall, the squad members overall just got there, even the ones who've been there a little longer. And then you have people just throwing up their hands, throwing them away just because they're not using the tactics that you want them to use. You don't know what is going on.
You don't know what is going on. Like, we're supposed to see the results, right? That's what we expect to see. Like, it's not about, like, we don't know what's going on. Like, you may not agree with their strategy. We're not seeing the strategy. Like, we're not seeing the results, the things that you promised that you would give us. Like, people don't have time to wait for, people are dying from diseases. People are inundated with debt, student loan debt, medical debt that they have from the banks, from the crisis that many people have not recovered yet. And if you're not delivering on the things that you promised to do, and you're giving up on that for the clear reason of political expediency, then by definition, you are a sellout. So I'll throw it over to my panel. What do you guys think?
Oh my God. So I can just break this down in like so many different ways. So when it's like Nina goes on and say like, well, it's all about the strategy. You know, there's an inside strategy and an outside strategy. And she goes on to talk about in depth about how there's this big outside strategy in which you can do it. And it's like, we're fucking doing that. Where's your inside strategy? Because the squad fucking has none. They have no. Again, and then we put one on a silver platter. By the way, most of us are like, hey, don't fucking vote for Nancy Pelosi. But if you are going to do it, here's the strategy. Hey, try this shit. It's easy. It's right here. And like, no, we don't fucking want to. And it's like, what the fuck are you? What the fuck are you there to do for? You know, and it wasn't just for. Okay, initially it was just for Medicare for all, but then afterwards, people came together and was like, hey, it's for what the fuck you want. Why are we rationalizing when we have the establishment by the balls? We got them. Why are we rationalizing? So that was the notion there, and this notion too that they're the best that we have. It's like, okay, like if you look back in history in terms of the civil rights, there's very, very few progressives. The most prominent progressive back then was Hubert Humphrey, and that was the only one. And so why are we like, how many do we need? I mean, this notion that we need like 100 social democrats to move the window to the left, and it's like there's like hundreds of other Congress people. It's about using political opportunity. And so like when you said earlier about like Chuck Schumer forcing a vote on something, like this is basic politics 101. And yes, I'm obvious in knowing that the political structure is leaning towards corporate Democrats. Well, at the same time, if you're a person like AOC who fundraises more money than the Speaker of the House, meaning you're untethered to the capitalistic system in terms of Congress, you could be able to do shit like this and piss them off. Like in ways like AOC complains and cries, but oh, I don't want to lose my committee assignments. And then on the other hand, you got a chick like Marjorie Taylor Greene's like, fuck the committee assignments. I have more time to do more bullshit and raise more money. So it's just it's so ass backwards the way they have about this. And that's what worries me about Nina. Because Nina, there's two types of Nina. There's the firebrand you see with Bernie, calling out the bullshit as you see it, going on TV, calling everybody out, especially on the CNN table when you got the Karens on the table coming after her. Then there's the side of Nina where you rationalize. It's more of the 2016 I'm for Hillary Nina, where it's like, hey, we have to be more centrist, rationalize, think smartly, where's the strategy, all that type of stuff. So that's the scary part. You know, I went long enough, but that's just my basic early opinions about Nina.
No, it really is scary, like how she can make you feel good. Like even there, like what she was saying, it did feel like you could have a sense, you could get the sense that you could feel good about how she's saying it, how she's delivering the message. I was like, dang, like she's being real with me now, like she's being honest. But the thing is, this just sounds like feel good excuses for not delivering on the promises, right? What do you guys think?
Yeah, I was going to say what was interesting to me is when she said they're pushing as hard as they can. If they were pushing as hard as they could, they would have forced the vote. If they were pushing as hard as they could, then why did Jamal Bowman, AOC, and Rashida Tlaib, why did they vote present for that Capitol Police funding bill? Why didn't they vote with the rest of the squad? They're not pushing as hard as they can. That's what really pisses me off about this whole, we need to give them a chance. We need to give them a break. Like they've had several opportunities where they really could have been powerful and really could have made an impact. And every time they stepped back or they cowardly stepped back and just said, you know what, I'm just going to let the establishment Dems like take this. And this is part of the reason why we can't get anything done, like on the left. Because we put people in who ran grassroots campaigns. They didn't take money from, corporate donors, but they're still behaving like establishment Democrats. So if that's the way they were going to be, then why didn't they just run as an establishment Democrat? Like, shoot me in the front, don't shoot me in the back.
One thing that I was discussing yesterday with Howell Underground is that if they're all moving the same way right now, and like how you guys are pointing out, like might as well like vote for a corporate Democrat if we're going to get the same things anyway. It shouldn't matter who's in office. We should be fighting and getting on the streets and pressuring our politicians regardless of who's there, whether it's a quote unquote progressive or a corporate Democrat. What do you think, Marcus?
I completely agree. I mean, if you go back to, for instance, I'll give a quick example. FDR. FDR is considered like a big time progressive and all those things like that. In actuality, his ideology was not to be a progressive or a socialist or any of that. What it was is he realized what he was facing in the nation and just decided, crap, in order for us to even save capitalism, I have to do a little bit of socialism. And so he realized I gotta pump money into this country to keep capitalism afloat. And the thing is, with somebody like Nina, she comes from a pure talent. Somebody like Obama, it's often perceived that it comes from talent, the way they make you feel when they talk about things. But what we have to keep in mind, and this is what we do on, the political matrix, I'll go into a little bit of young Morpheus kind of breakdown. You got to always follow the money and look at who's involved in what, who do they pay to do what type of consultants do they pay? Now, a lot of consultants which they pay do research on analytical studies on what people are thinking, how they're feeling, what kind of things get emotional reactions out of them, which political issues are very important, somewhat important, not important at all. And they're calculating all of these things along with all the polling data which they have. And so they know how to slice that message where they're hitting all the notes that you need to hear, but you're not getting any substance.
Exactly. Yeah, and I just want to show here. This is who like she's proud of endorsing her. So she says, "I'm proud to receive the backing of Congressman Ted Lieu, or Ted Lee, a leader who has tirelessly stood up for bold change, fighting for LGBTQ plus equality, climate justice, and universal health care. I look forward to joining him in Congress to fight for our democracy and strengthen our party. I haven't heard of any accomplishment that this guy has done. Like, what results has he delivered on?" And then RJ here, going back to your tweet, you said he is one of the weakest cultural and political Democrats in the House. Definitely not an endorsement I would be touting about. So you want to talk a little bit more about that, RJ?
This guy is one of the biggest cucks and pricks that I've known. Like, he's on par with what's his name, Adam Schiff, as Trump used to call him. He's actually Adam Schiff. They're both from California. And these two scumbags, like, they're such terrible Democrats, like, especially politically, and they are terrible in terms of how they sow strength. Like, Ted Lieu was one of the biggest, like, impeachment pushers back then, and it was all of the Russiagate line. It was all of the children, what happened with January 6th, regardless of how you feel about it. Like, the way he was going about it was all cultural, no political substance. And what's surprising is that he's, at the time, he's really a centrist Democrat. He really doesn't, he is not something that he stands for in hard substance. And easily when the establishment tells him, hey, do this, he does it. And so that's why I'm concerned. Is like, why Nina though? Like, why would I want to know who reached out to Nina. Did she reach out for his endorsement, or did he just say, I'm going to endorse you? Like, what kind of relationship they have? Because people don't just throw out endorsements for nothing. Like, I believe someone on Twitter the other day said endorsements weren't like they were 10 or 20 years ago. Endorsements help the person who's doing the endorsing. It's not the other way around. So that's what's very confusing about what's going on, because in the House of Representatives, it's a 2-year term, so I'm pretty sure Ted Lieu was like, okay, I scratch your back here, you scratch mine next time around. So if Nina wins, which looks like it will, because she's literally creaming the Hillary bot right now. So the likelihood of her winning is high. So look out for Nina endorsing fucking Ted Lieu in 2 years. So that was my overall thoughts.
Yeah, go ahead, Sabrina.
Oh, I was just going to say, like, it's just so weak. It's like, do you have to announce every endorsement? Because that's one I think I would have kept quiet. I mean, he's just not, he's weak. you have to wonder like what's going on behind the scenes, right? And it's like RJ said, like, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Like, what kind of agreement do those two have, like, here? And it's not just him, too, but like, there was the meeting that she had with or the video call that she had with Bakari Sellers. That's questionable to me. Let's remember who Bakari Sellers is and what he did during Bernie's campaign. I just, how could you go and, be friendly with this guy? This guy like tried to destroy, like was part of the ones that tried to destroy like Bernie's campaign. Like, why are you cozying with this guy? So it just, I wonder like what's going on behind the scenes. Again, Marcus was saying, you just have to follow the money.
Yeah, you wanna add on to that a little more, Marcus?
Yeah, and going along with the money, I want to bring up something now. This might seem like it's kind of coming way out of, left field, but I do believe that it fits. And when I finish what I'm saying, hopefully it'll make sense. If you go back to, I'm trying to remember his name, not Sigmund Freud, the nephew of Sigmund Freud, who he actually started, he actually had a couple of books called like Propaganda and stuff like that. Anyway, when I remember his name, I'll blurt it out. But what he did was he took a lot of his uncle's, techniques and methods and studies and research of people's, mental states, and through his, I guess, what his conclusions, he was able to discern that most of us, are more easy to react to things that we feel. And so if you tie some kind of emotional connection to whichever that issue may be, it's more likely that you'll get people involved in the issue or, make them desire whatever it is. So Edward Bernays, that's his name.
Yeah.
So
Thank
what
you,
Edward
Anthony.
Bernays, what he came up with is the whole idea of appealing, selling a product, whether it's politics, news, whatever, and which a lot of actual reporters who go through college, they actually go through a lot of these different things through Sigmund Freud, which is required for them to do. And so in that little bit of learning, maybe it's one class, two classes, but it's teaching you to think and conditioning you to think a certain way and how to target your audience. And so the reason why they talk and act and say things a certain way is because all of this stuff is data tested. And it's been working for years. I mean, for those who don't know, look up freedom torches. Freedom torches was something which they did to get women to start smoking cigarettes. They played on the women's right angle, and it intended to manipulate women's feeling of not feeling for men. And so since women will be able to smoke cigarettes, that's their way of kind of slipping the middle finger back to men. But it was just a secret tactic to try to boost product sales. And once they figure that out, they start doing it with thing after thing after thing. And politicians started using these same methods in how they would deliver their speeches. And so all this money is part of, this whole dog and pony show, or if you want to call it like the Harlem Globetrotters and the Washington Generals. To me, this is, pro wrestling. We just have to be able to call it out and force these wrestlers to actually have to, sorry, got a little tied up there. Make them actually have to commit to getting something done. They just can't keep playing around. I mean, some stuff we're not going to be able to hold them, and force them to do it. But on some issues, at some point, there has to be a point where you force these people against their will to get something done.
So pretty much these are like tactics, psychological tactics to try to get people to feel good and riled up to be a part of part of a team.
Or angry.
Or angry, yeah, and like to incite them, to energize them.
Yeah.
But We need to know this stuff. We need to know what tactics that they're using, so that when they're using, they're like, nope, I know what they're trying to do. They're trying to use this tactic to try to make me feel like I should be behind them and vote for them. But I know how this is gonna go. They're not actually gonna fight for me. Like, I've seen the patterns. So thankfully, people are waking up to this. This information is traveling around. That's something that these big tech oligarchs are seeing. The politicians are seeing, like all the predator class are seeing. They're using big tech to try to suppress us, suppress people that are calling this stuff out. And unfortunately, there still are some people on the left who they think they're out of the matrix just because they understand how there's money in politics. And then they think that they can just keep voting for these same people that are oppressing them, and that somehow they're going to save them. No, like we're done with electoral politics. We have to take action outside of that now. And like how we were mentioning earlier, it doesn't matter who's there.
Quick question. Bernie Sanders always talked about the millionaires and billionaires and the CEOs and the elites, right?
Mm-hmm.
We all know that. But here's what Bernie Sanders never does. He'll name one or two elites, but he doesn't start naming more names. And he knows who these people are because they come to Congress. They try to give him donations. He knows when they're coming for these different bills, when they're sitting in front of, appropriation committees. He knows who these people are. But he's keeping it vague about calling them out. You should ask yourself why.
Yeah, what he does is he only goes after two people, really, Jeffrey Bezos and the Walmart family. And one thing I do want to add to what the man has said earlier, really about how the politicians use language and play to your feelings in order to garner support. Nina, where you look at her, she's a very good politician. I mean it in this instance, because she, in a way, could appeal to all factions of the left and liberals. And follow me with this. Nina Turner's seat she's replacing is by a CBC member, Congressional Black Caucus member, Marsha Fudge. And that is in a deep blue Black liberal district. So Nina, by trying to work with Bakari Sellers, because everybody and their grandmama likes Bakari Sellers, who's a Black liberal. So she feels by playing nice to him, using him, it'll keep Black liberals to support her over Chantel Brown. You have some people on the left who are pro-MPP, and that's why she was at the convention, even last year. She was one of the headliners. She was actually the last one to speak. And so that's going to garner support for her as well, because you have some people that say, okay, well, I'll still continue to vote for progressives. There's some people on the left that are like that. They'll get her support. And it's working, obviously, because in her district, yes, it's heavily blue, but she's creaming the crop right now. And at some point when she gets elected, because I feel like it's inevitable based on what I've seen, she'll have every tool in the toolbox to gaslight, to make an excuse. She was just on tape defending the squad, saying they're all we have. Sometimes it's not healthy to go after her. So she knows the game. And that's dangerous, because it's kind of hard to push her. It's almost like those cucks who are saying we can push Biden. It's like, you idiots. Like, he's been there for 50 years. He knows all the tricks in the toolbook. And I feel like Nina, by her being Bernie's right-hand woman, she knows all the tricks of the trade. She knows how to gaslight. She knows how to get people to fall in line. She knows who to support to get people in her back pocket. So that nice persona she puts on, yeah, we love Auntie Nina, but when her as a politician, she is ruthless as it comes. She's more ruthless than Bernie, because she was the one telling Bernie, don't drop out. So I would keep my eyes on her.
Hell yeah. Yeah, and people are gonna be like, hey, don't you remember Nina Turner, like how she was backing Bernie? That's what I know. A lot of people are gonna use that, and I know Nina Turner, like, she's going to use that energy that she used during the campaign. Hello somebody, like how she was like energizing us with her speeches, and she's really good at that. And then it's really scary. Like it's a really powerful tool to have.
Yeah. Another thing I want people to think about too is, like, she has more experience than the other members of the squad. They're still kind of, fresh and young to this. And she's been doing this, and she worked like in the state house, I believe, in Ohio. So she's been around for a long time. She knows how the game works. She worked with Bernie. She at one point I thought she was a Clinton surrogate. I could be
That was
wrong. I
in
may have to.
that
Yeah,
was
and
in
then
That
she
was
changed.
2015.
yeah. Okay, so she knows how to work both sides. And I think that's something people just need to be aware of. Like RJ said, she knows what she's doing.
Exactly. So Marcus, you want to let us know like what the other families are and why Bernie doesn't name them? I imagine it's because a lot of those families and those names donate to these movements like sunrise350.org that pose themselves as these progressive movements when in actuality they're doing the work of these families, these predators that are oppressing us, right?
Yeah. Well, so I don't get you in trouble since you're not on Rockfin. How I'll sum it up is if you look at the the World Economic Forum, you look at places like, what is that they just went to not that long ago? Not the G7, but what was it called? Davos.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the people who you see at Davos, start looking into who they're involved with. When you look at people like Klaus Schwab and the Great Reset, they're literally telling you what their agenda and goals are. And if you notice, all of a sudden, for some reason, all of the politics is kind of working out that way in these ways which they envision that they would like to happen. But for some reason, though they're not saying it directly to any politicians, and you're not seeing a direct tie besides, for instance, like you see, okay, this person took money from Dell, this person took money from United Healthcare, this person, XYZ. You'll see those ties, but you have to start noticing when you start seeing them all together all the time, over and over and over on the same initiatives. If you start seeing that, then you have to at some point say, you know what? When they talk about the elites and it's a big old club, there's the club. They're showing you parts of the club. Now, you're only going to see the outer shell. And I could go into some of the names where they kind of, I guess where we would call the prominence of the name, because a lot of them have kind of changed their names, got married here and there, but they're still in power over the corporations. And some of these giant families, like for instance, the Waltons, they're married into another giant family. Just like, for instance, a lot of people talk about, well, only the Rothschilds in the UK have a lot of money. And most of the Rothschilds, they don't have the same wealth that they used to. Well, the Rothschilds are also married into the Rockefeller family. When you start looking into the people who actually own companies like DuPont, when you start looking into who actually owns the patents on stuff like Velcro, when you start looking at these people, then you start seeing where the real money and power actually is and where the real powerful families are.
Definitely. And those families were donating to Naomi Klein, who was campaigning for Bernie. Naomi Klein, who's supposed to be like the environmental figure. And what's his name? The guy from 350.org, I can't remember his name, like Jeff Boone or something. They were trying to censor the Planet of the Humans because it was spoiling their plans. Because it was exposing how with, for example, the Green New Deal, like you still have to use all these minerals. You have to overexploit these minerals from the global south, which means more imperialism there. And then
Yep.
you brought up the World Economic Forum. You guys know who Steph Kelton is, right? Bernie's economic advisor. She was at that forum and she was praising Klaus Schwab, this guy who wants to implement more capitalism. And to try to solve like all of these issues that we're having, like with the pandemic and everything.
For the audience, you should bring it up. I'm telling you, bring it up on the screen. So I'm just not talking, we're not just throwing something out there. Look up the Great Reset. They literally, this is you can go to an actual website. You can hear a chairman, Mr. Klaus Schwab, who's telling you exactly what he plans to do, what he wants their overall objective for the world. And it's almost like, I don't know if you guys remember the movie Demolition Man, but those who remember the movie Demolition Man, he's like the creepy old old villain guy who's really running everything and forcing everybody to be nice to each other and forcing everybody to think the same. This is kind of what Klaus Schwab kind of reminds me of, like some evil mastermind who's trying to
He
force
talks like one.
this, you know, it's like a weird James Bond villain almost.
Definitely.
But yeah, I mean, he talks about it. He details information, and you can see the companies that are on there. I need to have you bring Elle on here, my new one of my new co-hosts, and Elle has so much information on this.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely got to do that. This is something I like to dive into too. But yeah, you guys brought up a lot of great points. And speaking of how the left is going to interpret how a lot of people, you know, are still invested in politicians thinking that they're going to, you know, save them. Sabby, you had a amazing video with Nico House talking about how Black people feel in this movement on the left. So I just want to ask all of you guys, like, how do you guys feel in this movement? Like, do you guys feel included enough? Have you guys felt like mistreatment? Do you guys feel like there's like the way that some people treat you guys is different from how they treat certain white people that are in this movement? Do you feel like some white commentators don't give enough support or shout outs to Black commentators and journalists? What are your thoughts, starting with you, Sabrina?
Oh, Franco, you're going to get me in trouble. Because RJ knows, like RJ and I have had this discussion before, but we feel like, so there are some people, I do want to say there's some white leftist commentators that have been very supportive, like the Vanguard, you know, you guys know Ryan Knight. I apologize if I forget anyone, but you know who you are, like Misty from Facts on the Ground. Like there are some people that have been very supportive, but the majority, they tend to play this "we're going to ignore you" game. And it's not just with like people like me and RJ. I'm talking about Black people who have been involved in this for a long time. So like when I interviewed Nico, he kind of like confirmed some of the suspicions I had along the way. And he kind of like confirmed that because he had that actual experience. And it made me realize, okay, this is not all in my head. You know, basically. I think a big part of it is, you know, when I started watching left independent media, the first Black person I found, well, actually my husband found him, was Nico. And then after Nico, later on, I found Tim Black, and then later on, Jamal Thomas. I didn't see any Black women. And maybe they're out there, but I have not found them. And so because of that, I was actually hesitant about doing this because nobody wants to be one of the only ones or two. I mean, you have, you know, Breonna Joy Gray, but she's a public figure because she was coming from like Bernie's campaign and all that kind of stuff. And then you had like little old me and like nobody knew who I was. So I was hesitant about doing it. And then I was like, well, what if everybody else who is thinking about doing it feels that same way and they just don't do it? So when I started to hear some of the white leftist commentators have really bad talking points around defunding the police and around reparations, I was like, no, somebody needs to come in and change this space, because I feel like they are delivering a message to a majority white audience about Black people that is incorrect. And so for people like me and RJ, and I'm a part of FHL as well, we're kind of here to change this space a bit and to offer a perspective from Black leftist commentators that a lot of times you just don't get to see. I think like people like Nico and Tim Black and Jamal Thomas, I feel like had we had like more of us back then, some of these things probably could have been prevented. But you can't go back and change the past, right? You can only just move forward. But for me personally, there's certain things I think that myself and RJ have noticed. For example, there may be some white leftist commentators that are more willing to prop up white left commentators that will have less subscribers than we do, simply because they're white. Not necessarily because they're better, not because their content is better, but simply because they're white and we're black. And they don't really want to have us come on and talk about our issues because they can't relate to it because they don't have the lived experience. And God forbid we prove them wrong in their own show. And I think that's what a lot of that is about. And sorry if I get passionate about this, but this has been going on for a long time. We have white leftist commentators out here telling people how they should use the N word, whether it's with the A or ER at the end. So we had to kind of step in and interrupt this space and correct that shit. Because like, I'm not going to let people just go around and spread that message. It's not okay. And then those same people later on will complain and say, we need diversity on the left. We need everybody to come together to help with these issues. But when you bring up respect for Black people or you bring up respect for Black issues, they are silent, they're hush, they don't want to be a part of it, but they want you to kiss their ass and walk with them on their journey. So I'm not about that. And that's why I'm here.
Yeah. Yeah. And please feel free to get passionate about this because this is stuff that really needs to be heard. And for a long time, the only person who would bring up like these issues that are happening within the left, because some of them, like, I'm sure like Jamal and Tim have gone through stuff like this, but they don't talk about like the way these social circles move within the left. But yeah, RJ, go ahead, man. What do you think?
Well, first I want to comment to my sister Sabrina. Don't apologize. Always talk your shit, girl. I always tell you that all the time. But I noticed too. There's a difference even going deeper between Black commentators versus the white ones. There's also a divide too among Black men versus Black women in the independent Black space as well. Like in terms of Black people going on the white commentator spaces, you see a lot more Black men than Black women, which is a problem. In that video in which Nico and Sabrina were in, you notice how it's always the three main Black people on all these independent lefty shows. You know who they are. It's always Bree Joy, it's always Cornel West, or it's always Nina. And then sometimes it's Adolph Reed. So it's like, well, we need to have more people instead of just those big 4 or 5 tap in those spaces. Now, I've been one of the lucky ones. There's been a lot of great people who've invited me on to talk about different things, from the Vanguard to your show, Franco, twice, to pretty much everyone on the Mikasa Sukasa network, and even some outside. So when I hear other people's experiences that Sabrina's going through and others, I'm like, yeah, I can see it. Because even I started coming to the left around late 2018, and I used to watch the Jimmy Dore show, and I would see he used to have Tim Black on. He would have he used to have Tim Black. He had Nico. He used to work with him as well, and I wouldn't really see any Black women, So I think that's a big problem with the left that's going on as well. So in terms of the independent media space, all we're asking for is that, hey, bring us on for a topic that we're talking about that's really pretty much important. Don't just have a panel of white leftists talking about reparations or other stuff that involves Black people without having a Black person there to talk about it. So when we give you one chance to actually, quote unquote, pander, actually do it so you can hear our perspective as Black people, since these are issues that we really care about and it's really closest to our hearts. And don't just bring on, like I said, the big 5. Actually bring on people who are really hardline about the issue in terms of being journalists, activists on the ground to actually understand what's going on in the situation.
I used to see Margaret Kimberly around more, like for interviews, right? But that's another big name. But they should bring her on more. She has a lot of great takes. Her knowledge on history is amazing. Marcus, what are your feelings about this?
Well, I'll give the audience a little bit of a disclaimer. For those who are not familiar with me, I am kind of very much against both of the political parties and the government, so don't look at me as pulling for any sides. I'm just going to give you my take as a content creator. Since I started, the one thing which I saw a reoccurring theme is white people always assume they have to teach or tell me something. Just the automatic assumption that they automatically know more than I do, and they have to teach me something. That is something that white people really need to check. Maybe you do know more than me. Maybe you don't, but you don't know me. Get to know me first before you decide what you think you know about me. For those who don't know about me, I am a history expert. And I'm talking about all the way to ancient history, to biblical history, world history. I've traveled all around the world. I'm former military. I was a weapons specialist. I have over 5 years of college. And I know what the hell I'm talking about. Whenever I do a video, sometimes I might take a week, 2 weeks researching, studying, clipping, finding this, finding that, because I want to combine as much information in as short as time as I can to try to educate people. I don't knock anybody who's doing it for money out here, but I don't do any of my content for money, and I never have. My goal is to wake people up. That's it, to educate. And some of the truth is going to be ugly, but you have to face that. If you're a white person and you came from a slave master, deal with it. A lot of times, if you just say, hey, man, what my ancestors did was fucked up, man, I'm sorry. Leave it at that. A lot of times, something that small can go a long way. But when you try to act like, well, I mean, that was a long time ago. That was in the past. And you try to act like the events of the past have nothing to do with today. It's offensive. And then I'll have people who love to critique me on maybe spelling on here on Twitter. I don't give a shit about spelling. I don't. You know what I'm talking about. You're just being a smartass. My expertise is on history, politics, Bible. If you want to be a fucking English teacher or English lit, go do that somewhere else. We're talking about actual real issues. I started off after I got out of the military, mostly being a anti-war activist. That's what I was pushing for. And then as more and more crimes were going on against the Black community between cops, then I started to shift more into focusing directly on my community. And then I started to notice in the brown communities too. I have ancestry, that's all kinds of mixed. I won't go into the long story. But for me, I have a unique pain that I feel from most white people as a whole. And for you guys to have done all of these things to all of my ancestors across the board, and for me to know that whole history, and then I have to listen to you try to talk about something, but you have no clue on. On my show the other day, I talked about indentured servants, Irish indentured servants. Because a lot of white people like to say, oh, well, the Irish were slaves. Well, you know what? The Irish were the biggest plantation owners in Jamaica and most of the Caribbean also. There were far more Irish who owned slaves than who could have ever even possibly been considered a slave. Also, indentured servants were paid. Slaves weren't. Also, an indentured servant, you couldn't take their child into servitude. Whenever people try to compare these things, it's offensive and disrespectful. And this is the mentality which I feel that's prevalent, maybe, extremely naive, maybe not enough exposure, but it's a disrespectful approach, which I feel that we get, from the white population as a whole. And I'm talking about content creators, I'm talking about politicians, I'm talking about even in our audience. The fact that most of the Black content creators I know have had to have it so rough means that a lot of people in the audience, you guys are not doing your part to have an open mind and to listen to what they're talking about. If you have somebody who's a Native American and he's talking about his tribe, he's going to be the expert on that subject. Instead of ignoring or trying to dismiss what he's saying or trying to think that you have a better understanding, listen. At least just hear it all the way through, and you can disagree afterwards. But the problem is, I feel majority of the people in the political left also, even though they try to tell themselves that. No, we're more open-minded and we don't think the same way. Look at Black Lives Matter. Look how that just flopped like a souffle. If you guys really did care that much, why hasn't been no more foot on the pedal to get things accomplished or get done? And I know this might offend some people when I say this. Let 5 or 6 Asian people get attacked, and all of a sudden there's millions of dollars. No problem. We have been getting brutalized and slaughtered in this country for almost 500 years. And we can't even get freaking reparations or an anti-lynching bill. We can't even get a bill for anti-lynching. And then you think about in 98, Japanese, which they were in a 10-year internment camps, they got reparations. The Jews got reparations from the United States for what Germany did. And it's still a debate on if you should do it, if you should rectify the sin which built this entire nation. So for me to know that whole history, to see the whole attitudes, to watch this white supremacist nation, and to watch people not even want to try to come out of that and start thinking differently and start trying to hear the other side of the story. And maybe if we have these conversations, we can settle some of this stuff, get rid of some of this animosity, which is brewing under the scenes. And believe it or not, a lot of Black people who you know who might be your friends, they got some pain and some anger sitting, which they hide back also. And you guys might hate what I'm saying or get rough, but I'm telling you the honest God truth, what goes on in probably a good 80 to 90% of most Black people I know at least. So I guess I'll leave it there.
Yeah, guys,
sorry to go on.
Feel free to go back and forth here.
Yeah, what you said is pretty valid, and I want your listeners to know this isn't just leftists thinking and upset about the Asian crime bill. Yes, we know it's a good thing, yada yada, but for Black people throughout this entire nation, I know liberal and conservative Black people who had their eyebrows up. I mean, just check the shade room if you want to see if people agree with what you're saying, and I agree with you 100% on that. And so that sentiment is pretty much valid. And of course, Rand Paul, who likes to say he's a constitutionalist, he's the one who actually blocked the anti-lynching bill. I think it was about a year ago, and he filibustered the thing. And of course, it's not just Republicans, it's Democrats too. They virtue signal and all that type of stuff. Even look at the George Floyd Act. Leftists, we know that George Floyd Act is.
Let's just call them what they are. If you're doing a filibuster, reading Green Eggs and Ham, to stop an anti-lynching bill, you're a racist.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% on that.
I want to add on to something that Marcus said when he mentioned the activist part, because that's another thing I noticed too. You notice a lot of these platforms don't bring on activists. Like if you look around, you have whole Washington and you have Medicare for All marches being organized around this country right now. I know many of us have had them on or talked to them at some point or another, but why is it that a lot of these other platforms, they're not even mentioning that these marches are taking place in July? They're not even talking about whole Washington. Some of the same people who were like, yes, we need to force the vote are freaking silent right now. So it makes me wonder, did you really want to push for people to get Medicare for all, or were you only talking about it because it was popular and trending at that time? And it's not even just with Medicare for all, just activists in general. Why don't they have people like Fiorella on? Why don't they have people like Glory on? Why don't they have people like Nico on? You know how many activists I've had come on my show? Why aren't they bringing people on who are actually doing the work on the ground instead of some scholar who researched it and is reading it from a book? Why is that?
I mean, I myself have literally been to actual combat zones. So I talk to some of these people on the ground. So when I hear, especially to bring up dumbass TYT for a minute, when they say some of the stuff they say, and they sit roughly about maybe 30 minutes away from me and in their little studio and never venture out, even though they have all the money and all the resources to fly everywhere and actually do real news. You got Jordan Sheridan, who is almost basically like with a cup in his hand, and he's making it all the way around all over the country to cover these important stories. They could go over there and actually talk to actual real people over there, and and stop taking, the State Department's narrative. But we already know they're bought and paid for. I can't remember the name of the group right now, but there's an actual agency. It's like CCN or C. I can't remember right now, but this agency, they are all on that list as clients, and so they are being represented by a talent agency. And when you start going down the list, you start seeing, wait a minute, politician, newscaster, and you start basketball player. Of course, they're going to have, athletes and actors. And in fact, what is it? Alyssa Milano, it's her husband's company who actually runs it. Why can't I remember the name of it? If it comes to me, I'll mention it. But yeah, when you start digging into these people and start seeing, like, why is this person hanging with that person? Why is, Amy Schumer cool with, like, I don't know, Ted Lieu, weird stuff like that. And then you'll find out, oh, wait a minute. Amy Schumer is actually Chuck Schumer's niece. Ah, okay. So that's why she knows this person and that person. You start seeing these ties all around. Like, for instance, Nancy Pelosi used to, like, babysit some of the Kennedys. When you start seeing these ties and you start realizing, oh, wait a minute, this stuff is more tied together than you realize. I mean, even Obama, you start looking into his parents and you're like, wait a minute, State Department, and you knew Dick Cheney. Whoa, what's going on here? Well, actually, he's related to Dick Cheney, for those who don't know. I think he's like, what is it, like fourth or fifth cousins or something to Dick Cheney? In which, when you look at it, there's a lot of powerful people who it will blow your mind. It's related to them.
Well, I guess the warmongering runs in the family.
Warmongering, yeah.
Good one.
It's all one big club, This is how it is.
It was like, I think it was like a 12 or 13-year-old who broke down this whole thing and figured it out. And like, they showed it on some kind of local newscast, but the little girl was sitting there and they were going through it, and they actually had like a geneticist who followed and was like, this person's related to that, and they're all related. Yeah.
It's crazy.
I think some people say that all the presidents are related to each other in some form. So I wouldn't doubt it now, based on what you said as well. And back to like Sabrina's point earlier about like not bringing like activists on. Like, there's even some shows that don't even bring like certain journalists on. And I'm not talking about big names. I'm talking about smaller people, the ones who make Substacks. Like, that's my favorite thing to do on my show. If you watch, I bring on people who sometimes are my friends, and those who I just go on Twitter, hey, who wants to come on my show? And they come on and say, hey, bring your Substack. I'll plug it. I'll read an article. And they bring up a lot of great work. A lot of the stuff I know is based on what they've written. And a lot of it is free. They just ask for donations and tips, and so shout them out. And they do a lot of great work. Like, one of my friends, he's taught me about anarchism, how to grow your own food in your own yard, how to create a left-wing movement. One of my friends, Renee, friend of Hampton Leftist, she broke down the entire Black Commissions report. And she broke it down in different sections, all in her Substack, an entire 200-page, I think it's bigger than that, but I'm not sure how many pages it is, but she broke it down in different sections. You can actually click on the link and go to the actual commissioners report, and it shows you there if you want to actually expand more. So it's basically plugging these different individuals for their work that they're showing, and you're not really seeing that all the time.
The activists that's key to bring on, like that informs people of like what's happening on the ground. All right, we're not just like sitting around and listening to people like on my phone or on my computer. Like, we have to invite people to step out of their comfort zone and to actually take action. And you were talking about just now, RJ, about growing your own food. Like, a lot of these smaller people are doing that, like these smaller journalists. And some of them are starting programs, like, for example, Derek Bro starting the Freedom Cells, connect with people who want to opt out of the system. And so they can teach people in their community different skills. I encourage so many people all the time on my show to, you can join Discord, you can meet people that are on there that live near you, and you can get something started. Josh Davis, who's in the chat right now, can attest to that. Like, he's met people around his area, and he started having events to spread awareness about Julian Assange in the DC area. So these things are critical. So the last question that I have for you guys about this topic is, how can this improve? I think a good step is, like, what we're doing here is like making people aware of this stuff. But what would you guys like to see going forward?
I guess I'll go ahead and take it first. Part of the thing is, we just have to have more of an open mind, and instead of getting into our habits of coming home and listening to the same people over and over, or only trusting the same information. I'm not saying change your mind on different information. If a person's correct, they're correct. It doesn't matter where it comes from. But try to actually venture out and listen to other voices. That's the only way you're going to find some of the channels. For instance, a channel like mine, I started out my channel, it's almost 2 years for my main channel. And then my other channel is almost at a year. And my newest channel is probably like 3 or 4 months. Total, I have maybe 250 subscribers. When you're a little bit more fiery, the algorithms are good at keeping you down, and that's one thing that we can't really do much against that. But if we're not getting suggested, people have to try to seek us out and look for us. I mean, we can only try to retweet ourselves and tag a bunch of people and hope that they share it. But some of you guys got to try to look. There's plenty of like diverse and brilliant thinkers out there, like the 3 people who I'm sitting here with. But the only way you find out is you've got to dig for that information. That's what I do when I'm researching. I mean, especially the way like most of these search engines are set up now. They make it so hard to find anything. Literally, on my Political Matrix channel, if you scroll, for instance, if I'm looking for it and I scroll down, I might see one of my videos, but to my actual channel title where it says to subscribe, I have to scroll down like 6 pages. So I know that I'm intentionally buried. So I know that that's part of why some people don't know me as much, but also do know that a lot of bigger names know who I am. And so the fact that they just completely act as if I don't exist, I notice it, and I take note of those people.
I guess for me, I'm gonna use a quick football reference here. So you guys know what the Rooney Rule is for football, right? For the NFL. So the Rooney Rule says that for every new head coaching position or internship, you need to have like 1 Black interviewee. And I feel like it goes back to what I said earlier to the show, where you have the same Black people being on these big independent shows all the time. Instead of doing that, actually bring on people who are Black, who are the best in their field for that specific topic. Don't just bring on the same different people at the top. And that way you get different perspectives, because you may have this big person who is Black on the left. They have a different point of view, but it doesn't always translate the same way down the stream. So I do think we need to keep that in mind. I feel like in the big independent media space, they're using the NFL's version of the Rooney Rule for their independent media. And we all see it, and I think it's really disgusting a lot of times. So that's something that we need to change.
Yeah, I'm going to use the sports reference too, RJ. I swear we right here. We right here. I was thinking about with football too. It's just like, I feel like a lot of times us, like the Black like commentators, we're kind of the ones that are sitting on the bench. And if you think about it, like, I don't know if you guys are really into football, but I am. And then like, if you think about it with like sports, who are the team members that Like if I go to a Patriots game, who are the ones, boom, that just pop up in my head, the players that I know? It's the players that I see on the field. I can't tell you who any of those guys are on the bench. And I watch football religiously, just keeping it real. So the thing is like doing things like what Franco is doing things like what the Vanguard has done. Like the Vanguard, I will say they've been really good about showing diversity, like to their audience. When you bring other like Black commentators on, you're introducing them to your audience. So that tells your audience, hey, this person has a channel too. I'm going to go check them out. In fact, I've had people say that in my comment section. I saw you on the Vanguard, and so I came over. So it's going to take like some of these like white leftist commentators, like bringing other Black leftist commentators on and introducing their audience to them, and doing so in a humble way, and not being afraid to do it because you're afraid that they may take people from you. They're not going to take viewers from you. You know, if anything, they're just, you're spreading it out, right? So that's the thing. But if you leave us sitting on the bench, it is going to be harder for people to know who we are. So we have to have a chance to get in the game and play. So that's kind of how I look at it. And I think the people who are doing this, like Franco and like, you know, Vanguard and like Ryan Knight and also Ron Pacone, I forgot to mention him earlier, like those people like doing this, that really helps us a lot because like Marcus said, the algorithm is just, it's not in our favor. And I've tested it out myself with a couple of videos. So I know what works and what doesn't work. So we really do kind of like need that support. And just don't assume that because we're Black and we're not a public figure, or we didn't go to Harvard, or we didn't go to Yale, that we don't know what we're talking about.
And just to add to what Sabrina said real quick, notice how all the big, really independent media shows, they all coordinate when they're going to talk about a topic. Like I'm going to use the Steve Donziger thing, for instance, with Chevron. Notice how the Katie Halper show, then Jimmy Dore, then Bad Faith, then Useful Idiots, within the 2-week span, they've all talked about it. So they have their own community, which means they're all sharing viewers, right? So we're all saying here is that we're not going to siphon viewers away from you. You're only branching off and creating a new community, which benefits you. Like, for instance, when someone goes on a Jimmy Dore show, what do people watch? They're going to still watch the Jimmy Dore show. Now, whenever he's offline, they're going to go to him. And then when he's back online, they're going to go back. So that's what's very confusing, you know? So you're creating a community and also you're branching off. So now that people who didn't watch your show initially, who are friends with the person who watched your show, now they're going to watch it because they know that you're fair. So that's all we're saying. It's basically growing your audience that way. It's networking.
Yeah, it's to expand and diversify so that your audience could be more informed. They're not going to abandon you just because they found another channel. They're just going to listen to more people. That's it.
I wanted to add something also, so that, you know, this is also a big part of the problem, man. I would be completely remiss and horrible if I didn't, you know, be fair and turn the mirror back. You know, I can point at, you know, certain people who might be naive in the white community, or, you know, unknown biases and things like that. But also in the Black community, when you guys are strolling by, just because you see somebody and they maybe only have, you know, say they have 30 subscribers, look at what the video is. If it's something that catches your attention, take the time to look at their video and don't just look for the one that has the highest amount of views. A lot of people, when they're looking for stuff, they search that way. And a lot of our people in particular have sometimes a more negative view about the ability of us to teach us. You know, it's like sometimes we're our own worst enemy, and we need to stop doing that also. And or feel like, well, if I talk to Savvy, or if I bring RJ on, then, you know what, maybe they might start listening to them more, and they're not going to listen to me. Because here's something, you know, if you see it in television, normally if there's a big time Black show and then another big time Black show comes on, it almost seems like they have to compete, and then one of them has to go away. And I know probably some of that PTSD might linger on in our community. And so how about we less hate and more congratulate? I mean, I know that my numbers are not where I wish they would be, but anytime I see, you know, another Black commentator and I see that, you know, 3,000, 4,000, 10,000, 50,000, I'm applauding that. I'm happy to see that success. And we need to all applaud our each other's success instead of, wishing for others' downfall. And if we do more networking and getting together like this, three different shows collaborating together right now, more collaboration, it gets everybody more familiar and it builds, more, I guess a more close-knit community.
Yeah, like a family. That familiarity also, yeah,
That's the
people will be
word.
more open, to listening to that. I have a special place in my heart also for people who, like, I still see, like, in my live chat, who have been with me since I was like less than 100 subscribers. There are people out there, thankfully, that do look for like the smaller content creators, and they try to give like constructive advice to help improve those people. Like, I love you guys. Thank you guys so much for helping me improve and helping me grow, helping to inform me. Because I'm not gonna know everything. I'm not gonna be perfect. And there are content creators out there that think that just because they have a platform that they're gonna know more than everybody, like everybody and their audience members. No, like there's a lot of chances that there's gonna be a lot of people in your audience that are gonna know a lot more than you on several issues. Um, Another thing I want to tell my audience is that put pressure on the content creators to bring on some of the smaller content creators, some of the smaller up and coming content creators, especially the black content creators. It's great that we finally have people like Savvy Sabs and Glory Jones. Like 2 years ago, we didn't have female black content creators. So keep shouting them out and put pressure on these bigger channels to have them on, especially when they're doing some groundbreaking work. Like, for example, Fiorella going down to Peru and covering the Peruvian elections. Like, I don't understand why she wasn't on a tour with all these giant channels that have more than 100,000 subscribers. And I don't know if you guys agree with this, but for me, to be 100% honest, I find the smaller content creators more genuine and sometimes more intelligent than the ones that have like over 100 subscribers. I don't know if you guys can agree to that, but that's my personal. Those are my personal thoughts. Like, I tend to listen more to the smaller content creators than the big ones.
It's funny. Tell them about the first video where like me and you got connected. It was my video, the allegory to the cave, Plato's allegory to the cave, which if you guys haven't seen it, sorry, shameless self-plug, you should check it out on the Political Matrix. It'll make you start thinking more about what's going on around you.
That video did break my brain. It's the habit still like on my favorites. That was the first video that I saw about you. But yeah, guys, thank you very much for talking about this topic here. Just real quick, because I do want to talk about what's going on in some of these other countries, and I want to stand in solidarity with what they're going through. Here is Israel's new president, and we're gonna talk about his history of racism. So let me zoom out here so that people can see exactly what I'm gonna show from this article. So this is on Mint Press News. It's called the frying. All right, hold on. Let me zoom out a little bit more so I can so people can see. If Bibi was the frying pan, is Bennett the fire? What to expect from Israel's new prime minister? So this is by Jessica Buxbaum, and she says it's not like Israel is replacing Netanyahu with a person who believes in equality for all, who believes in freedom for all, who believes in human rights for all. They're replacing Netanyahu with an ultra-nationalist who is going to put forward his ultra-nationalist agenda. And that was by Diane. She was quoting Diana Buttu. And just to give you guys a bit of history of this guy, like some of the racist rhetoric that this guy uses. During a parliamentary debate on releasing Palestinian prisoners, Bennett bragged about killing Arabs. He said, if we capture terrorists, we need to just kill them. And he said that back in 2013. He also said, I've already killed a lot of Arabs in my life, and there is no problem with that. In 2018, he advocated for a shoot-to-kill policy for Palestinians crossing the Gaza border. When questioned about whether children would be a part of this policy, he said, "They are not children, they are terrorists. We are fooling ourselves. I see the photos." During the televised debate in 2010, Bennett said to Palestinian lawmaker Ahmad Tibi, "When you were still climbing trees, we had a Jewish state here." In an interview with the New York Times in 2013, Bennett reiterated his strong opposition to a Palestinian state. "I will do everything in my power, forever, to fight against a Palestinian state being founded in the land of Israel," Bennett said. And this is the guy, and this is the country that is supported by our current president and his administration, Joe Biden and his gang filled with Anthony Blinken, Avril Haines. This is who they support. So let me get some thoughts in from my panel here. What do you guys think about this?
My initial thoughts is, wow, they got Israel's Joe Biden in office. They just got rid of the Trump. So it's just this is a pattern I've noticed since I've been talking about politics and paying attention to it since 2016. Whatever the United States president is, other countries who really rely on the United States in terms of internationally, they'll find a leader that's very similar to him. Like when Trump got elected, then it was Boris Johnson, then it was Benjamin Netanyahu. And now that Trump got ousted in the U.S., now that Biden's here, now they got to put in this fool who is more of an institutional covert racist in terms of how he does his politics. Whether it was Netanyahu, he was more outward and he was easily vilified by the media. So that's what scares me even more, because I can't even imagine the type of evil shit he can do now. We were complaining about Benjamin Netanyahu, and a lot of times, the media would play it up, so that's why they had to stop. But with this new guy in place, I can't even fathom the amount of destruction that could happen. So that's just my initial thoughts.
100%. Savvy and Marcus?
Yeah, my take on that is it's like you can change the player, but that doesn't change the game. So it's like I think back to Saddam Hussein, and don't get me wrong, Saddam Hussein was terrible towards his people. But the goal back then was to get him out. And then, the US came and they got Saddam Hussein out. But then what happened after that? Then that gave rise to ISIS. So it's like, it's the ideology that needs to change. It's not like changing the person doesn't really change what's going to happen like in that country. And we've seen this throughout history. We've seen it time and time again. We see it right now in the US. Like the goal, remember during the presidential election, they were like, no, we just got to get Trump out. It doesn't matter if Biden's not good. We just got to get Trump out. And so we got Trump out and we got Biden, and I feel like Biden's worse than Trump in certain ways. So we're still not improving anything here. I mean, so again, like we switch presidents, they changed like leaders, but the game is still the same. So you have to change the ideology if you want the new person coming in to actually be able to make a difference.
It's just different ways of things getting worse, right? Like Biden is increasing the budget with ICE. He's increasing the amount of funding that we're giving to Israel. He's militarizing the police even further. Like he's increasing the budget, right, for the police. Marcus, I know you study this stuff a lot of what's going on in that region of Israel. So what are your thoughts on this? Oh, you're muted.
Oh, sorry about that. I would say, and yeah, you're right. I'm following everything going on with Israel day and night. So the problem we have here is what a lot of people don't realize: the debate for Zionists, and a good majority of the people are Zionists there, and if they're not Zionists, they're not going to stand up against the Zionists. So basically, in effect, the Zionists basically are like massively powerful. And the argument, the debate that's been going on for the longest, basically inside of Israel, is: do we force them out, or do we just kind of take our time, kind of, slowly getting them out of the land? That's the overall goal. And then it's kind of, okay, are we going to kill them to get them out? Or are we just going to, kind of throw them out in a refugee status? That's kind of the secret, debate that's really going on, even though they try to, make it sound nicer than what it is. And oh, well, you guys just don't understand. You know, it's complicated. It's not complicated. They believe that that land is theirs. You can look at the maps, how much of the land that they've taken. So history should be an indication of the future, which the goal is. That last spot, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, that spot is the third most holy site in Islam. That's the reason why the whole Arab community is so up in arms about what's going on and a lot of the stuff that's happened with the mosque. You know, them shooting tear gas in, rubber bullets, even a fire right next to there recently. That's inflaming tensions of Muslims outside of that region. That's the reason why you're starting to see Syria get involved. And that's the reason why you see Iran trying to slip weapons to Hamas. And that's the reason why you see all of these things going on. Because what Israel has started doing is Netanyahu, he likes to start a little bit of trouble right around elections or whenever he's in some kind of, bribery scandal or something to kind of take the heat off of it. So since the Zionists love, the taking of land, he'll go in and go take some land. And so that makes them happy. It kind of calms everything down. Like I used the reference the other day. It's kind of like Grand Theft Auto. After you've done like a whole bunch of crimes, your level starts getting really high and more police start coming out and, the SWAT vehicles and helicopters. And so he's just trying to get his level back down, so, hey, whoa, rest of the world, calm down.
And he'll get back to doing that, all the mischievous
so then he can
stuff.
get back to doing what he was doing. And most of the people in Israel, they don't see that. They don't see that, hey, there's a lot of pressure. That's why I'm kind of calming things down. They're like, no, full speed ahead. The Americans will be cool. Fuck it. Let's move. Naftali Bennett, that's his ideology. He doesn't fear the pressure from the outside world. And he is a hardcore Zionist. The difference between Netanyahu and Naftali Bennett is Netanyahu was not a religious Zionist. So his is more just politically motivated. Naftali Bennett is an ideologue who believes that God has promised him every inch of that land. And whether he says directly that he's going to try to take that land, that is what his ideology tells him to do. That's what his faith leaders tell him to do. That's what his community tells him to do. So that's the reason why this is a lot more dangerous of a situation. Because if he does keep pushing and say one of these rockets, get fired in and other nations get involved, we could be looking at right on the doorsteps of a World War III type of situation. So it's a lot bigger of a deal than a lot of people really understand, I feel.
With these weapons too, like they have high tech weapons, like they know how to aim it, and they're aiming at innocent people, like women and children. They don't care. And this is where like our money has been going to, because the US is funding this. Like imagine all the things that we could have had in this country if we weren't funding, this apartheid state. But if there was no Israel, like what Joe Biden said, which I'm going to show here in this clip, then
he'd have to create one.
We'd have to create one, right? Exactly. So I'm going to zoom in here so that, and then I'll adjust the audio so you guys can hear what he said. Oops. I don't know if you guys can see, but he's like, he's bald here, so he must have had some kind of like surgery to.
The United States of America would have to invent an Israel
Joe Biden has had
to
ton of
protect
work.
her
Didn't you
interests
see some pictures
in
in
the region?
2008 when you look at him on the
United
side? He
States-
has like wrinkles and stuff everywhere, whatever.
Oh,
So
yeah.
he's definitely got some work done.
Look at the bags under his.
All right, let me adjust this so you guys can hear.
They've had to put him in a dry cleaner for the 2020 election.
Plus pumped him with like all that juice, like to get him like amped up against Bernie Sanders and Trump. But yeah, look, here's Joe Biden. Like, here's our president.
If we look at the Middle East, I think it's about time we stop, those of us who support, as most of us do, Israel in this body, for apologizing for our support for Israel. There's no apology to be made. None. It is the best $3 billion investment we make. Were there not an Israel, the United States of America would have to invent an Israel to protect her interest in the region. The United States would have to go out and invent an Israel. If we look at the Middle East,
all that matters to them,
I think it's about...
all that matters to them is gaining control of that region, right?
Yep.
So they would have just had to create another Israel there to gain control of that region, and you know, we still would have seen like these Netanyahus and Naftali Bennett's. And
go back to Thomas Herzl. I mean, they were pushing for this agenda even before they knew where the land of Israel was. I mean, the original site that they thought was Israel, where they were going to actually put the kingdom, was in Uganda.
Sorry, you cut out there a little bit, Marcus. What did you say? The last part?
What was the last part you heard?
About Uganda?
I said, they actually thought that Israel was in Uganda. And so that was the land that they were actually going to build Israel in. I mean, the early Zionists, most of them, like there was always a divide before between the Jewish people of faith and, the rabbinic Jews versus the Zionists. The Zionists, most Zionists don't know anything about religion or care about religion. Most of them are atheists, but they're willing to use the Bible for their political whims and gains. And, we got to remember who gave them the land. Great Britain. Where did a lot of these people first come from? Great Britain. And now the United States. So, I mean, outside of Israel, majority of Jews in the world, Jewish people in the world, come from the United States or the UK.
So I feel like a lot of this racism also is like a product of the people who fund them, right? The racism in our country. Just look at our disgusting history. Like all our presidents have been racist. That Margaret Kimberly wrote a book about that. But the rhetoric we were hearing from the mainstream news and even a lot of independent left news and from Bernie Sanders, Trump is the most corrupt, most racist president of all time. Is this true? I mean, if you look at the thumbnail, I have there Franklin Pierce. We had a bunch of slave owners. This is something that Marcus was talking about on his show, but I'd like to get the thoughts of Sabrina and RJ. And then Marcus, what are you guys' thoughts about that?
It's interesting because I think Trump wasn't any more racist than other presidents that we've had. I think the difference was he was saying the quiet part out loud. He was so bold about it, whereas they, would say those things too, but they would say it more discreetly. So, for example, if you think about Ronald Reagan, for example, Ronald Reagan was also racist. He was the one who coined the term welfare queen. And everybody knew who he was referring to, like when he said that. Now, if Trump would have said it, he probably would have just said, Black women. But they use these, different phrases and terms to hide it a little bit better. But for Black people, I mean, we knew. So when I heard people say, well, Trump's, I'm a Republican and Trump's horrible and I want to go back to the days of Reagan. I'm a Reagan Republican. Well, you're not really any better. Because Reagan was just as racist. And then there was tapes released, I think it was about a year ago, where Reagan was calling Black people animals and all of that stuff. So it just, even when people mention FDR, and this was one of the things I think for Bernie, when Bernie created that sticker where it was supposed to be like symbolic of like FDR and his face was on it and all that kind of stuff. That was another thing I felt like some platform slipped on. They kept talking about Bernie's going to be like FDR and the New Deal, but they would never mention that the New Deal left out Black people. And this is why you need people like us in this space, because we mentioned that, we call that out. I mean, like RJ's brought that up, like other people have brought that up that have come onto my show as well. So none of them were really like trying to like actively like help Black people per se. People might say, oh, well, Kennedy was, I live in Massachusetts. I can tell you a long story about the Kennedys. That's a whole nother show. but even they're liberal. And I have my feelings about liberals, especially in the Northeast. They're still racist. They're covertly racist. You want to see it? Be a Black person and move into one of their neighborhoods. That's my rant on that. Sorry.
Don't be sorry about that. Don't be sorry about that. RJ, we know that Bernie was a really strong supporter of reparations, right?
Yeah, I mean, to get back to really what you were saying about all this for your original question, yeah, I think it's pretty concerning about really what's going on with that. I think Sab's made some good points too, really about FDR leaving out. And of course, like the New Deal and stuff was great for the white working class and for white farmers, and Black people were left out. I mean, it wouldn't have passed if it did. I mean, the entire South controlled Congress. I mean, all of them were the leadership in terms of all the committees, the Ways and Means Committee, the Financial Services Committee. That's how these Dixiecrats got their power. So FDR knew, hey, if I just make sure white working class people and the white middle class get off well, and sorry, Black folks, and his wife was pretty progressive. Eleanor Roosevelt tried, and when Eleanor Roosevelt went to his own husband, who was the president, said, hey, let's do civil rights, he's silent, mute. I'll let you tour across the country, but I ain't doing jack shit for Black people. So that's pretty problematic. And, in terms of Trump, people thinking Trump being the most racist of all time, he's pretty racist in terms of rhetoric. And the reason why we know all the crazy stuff Trump is doing is because the media is up his ass every day. So if he did do something racist, we all fucking know about it. So, and that's the kind of thing. So, and it seems like under Joe Biden, instead of the media covering it as aggressively and going into every detail and going hour by hour, show by show, talking about the same shit, under Biden, they bullshit you about how it's not as bad as Trump, or we're misinterpreting the information, or that our eyes are lying to us about the racism of Joe Biden. So that's what's even crazy about that as well. And also this notion, so, and the mainstream media went from Biden being like FDR to, well, maybe he could be like Lyndon Johnson. It's like, yeah, people really don't understand, like Lyndon Johnson. Yes, he was a Southern Dixiecrat. Like, he was friends with all of them. He was also a New Deal Democrat. So not only was he a Dixiecrat, but he was a New Deal Democrat. Two extremely problematic things for Black people. So that's another thing. But at least when Lyndon Johnson was smart enough to know, hey, if I give Black people civil rights, who are they going to vote for when they have voting power? The Democrats. That's why he racistly said, hey, I'll have those Black people, and I'm cleaning it up because we're on YouTube, I'll have those Black people voting Democrat for the next 200 years. We're 64 years and counting at least. So that was pretty racist. So about Trump being like the most racist president, I kind of highly doubt it. We have some pretty big people who are presidents who kind of take the cake with that, the ones who actually own slaves. So yeah, that's my take on that.
No, I'm like, it's funny to me anytime I hear anybody, it's especially for Biden to say that, or for Bernie or anybody to make that claim. I mean, think about it. We literally had presidents who were responsible for the Louisiana Purchase, stealing a whole chunk of native land right there. Then think about, the Alamo in Texas. That's stealing a whole another chunk of land. How racist is that? You've already came over, stolen land from the Native Americans, killed over 100 million of them conservatively. There could be far more than that with smallpox blankets. So for those white people out there who like to play this pride thing, no, it wasn't some kind of advanced military strategy. You just gave them smallpox blankets. That's what you did. You sneak attack somebody, biological, chemically weaponized blankets. That's how you took the land in the first place. And then you bring people over here for slavery on top of that. And then you go and steal more people's land. I mean, I don't even know how that mentality goes on. And then we look at president after president after president stealing chunk and chunk and chunk land. I mean, the westward expansion, the purpose for the westward expansion is when they found out about silver and gold, which started the gold rush. That's which started them in digging deeper into Mexico in the first place. Now they got cut off there at that part of Texas, but they were much deeper in there trying to steal the gold all the way down, from Montezuma's area. I mean, off the coast of Florida, how many pirate ships or so-called pirate ships that sunk because of all the gold that they were stealing out? I mean, there were ships and ships and ships that sank. I mean, the Spanish lost a third of their fleet. That's how much gold they were stealing. And so you watch what was going on and what was allowed under presidents and what was cool, and the Monroe Doctrine saying, you know what, even though we don't even have a military, this is how arrogant the United States was. We don't even have a military, but everything that's beneath us, the Americas, is all our territory. Don't you come over here. You can't even do business with them. That's what America is done. I mean, president after president after president. I mean, Japanese internment camps. That's something we did on American soil. What is it? Crap, why can't I remember it? The schools, which they used to have, the boarding schools, where they used to force Native Americans to these schools. And they used to, the motto in these schools was, kill the Indian, save the man. That's the kind of stuff which president after president after president after president. I mean, we literally had a president which showed the KKK film, Birth of a Nation, in the White House. We have presidents which commemorated Confederate statues in Arlington. And then people want to talk about Trump. Trump is the typical old racist guy who says racist shit randomly. But these other people have done stuff with their racism. Other presidents have sat through, they've been there as part of the redlining and segregation and, and putting the 3 strikes laws. And all of a sudden how all these drugs, which are not indigenous to the area, all of a sudden manufacture into our communities when we don't have the money to bring them there. And then guns and all of these things. You look at all the presidents who they will zone and commission for liquor stores and all these other things, but we can't put up a mark, or we can't zone that to grow fruits and vegetables. You cannot even close to bring a buffoon like Trump doesn't even remember what he says half the damn time. What his presidency was he say some shit which he heard on Fox, which sounded good to him, and then all of his flunkies run around trying to make it look like he's going to get it done or try to get it done. It was just fear mongering. All they did was scare the shit out of most of our parents, and I guess probably in RJ's case, probably grandparents, but scare the shit out of them. And, oh God, we got to get Trump out of here. Oh, I mean, what do you think Trump's going to do? You think Trump is going to round up black people and start doing something? No. Trump is a grifter. That's what he's been his whole entire life. He is grifting. He actually didn't even think his ass was going to win the presidency. I mean, go back and look at when the election. His face was like the biggest oh shit I've ever seen on somebody's face. That dude, if you go and go back and look at stories before this, he was trying to renegotiate at NBC for the next year of Apprentice. And he found out that Gwen Stefani was making far more money than him. And he got furious. And he figured, you know what? I could try to run this presidency thing. And if I'm a failed candidate, they have to pay me more. So this guy didn't even really think. So the fear that people have of Trump and making him like he's so much worse. Trump is no different than most Republicans, honestly.
What you said too about Birth of a Nation being played in the White House, I believe that was Woodrow Wilson back in the early 19. He was the president after Theodore Roosevelt, and a weird distinction is that Theodore Roosevelt was one of the first presidents to allow black people to work inside the White House, and then the Woodrow Wilson, when he came president, he kicked him out and banned him. So that's crazy. I wanted to add that.
Well, I was going to add this, RJ. What about why do so many black people have the last name Jefferson? I mean, you start looking at some of these, you're talking about the worst, the most hateful, racist president. Why do black people have some of these same last names like Washington? Why? I mean, a lot of people don't know this. When But George Washington had horrible teeth. When his teeth went out, what he did is he took one of his slaves and literally plucked his teeth out and made a set of dentures. I mean, there's certain ones who, when they would whip their slaves, they would take brine and put brine in the cuts to make it sting and burn more. I mean, these people don't have a clue. Anybody that would say Trump is the worst now, we might, if we're to want to talk about rhetoric and maybe modern day era, say what, after the 70s, but every president before that was, I mean, some of them, they might have been good at faking the funk for the people and knowing how to hit all those right notes, just like Kennedy was, just like RFK was. They knew how to sell it the right way. But most of these people were either indifferent to black people or did. I mean, we can go into Lincoln. Lincoln wasn't trying to free the slaves. He's even said it. He was like, well, I just saw that the nation is about to rip apart. And so it kind of walked him into that decision. But that wasn't even his intentions. I mean, we all have to really rethink about these so-called founding fathers.
So I was just going to say Trump is just a product of this racist system. The same thing with what we're seeing with who we put as leaders in all these countries in the global south. Like, it's just products of, the racist system of, capitalism and imperialism, the highest form of capitalism, spreading to all these countries. We want to spread democracy. No, we're spreading our racism from this country over to other countries and exploit and cause suffering to all these people.
Yeah, I actually want to defend what you said, because you said that, okay, maybe in the modern history, the only person who says modern history that Trump is the most racist is Bernie. He's been saying it forever. He goes on this long spiel. Other liberals and those who are Democrats, they're the ones who are extremely hyperbolic. So that's why I feel like maybe you were right on the nail on with that as well. And also to what Franco said, one of Chris Hedges quotes, he said that Trump benefited from the corrupt system, but Biden was its mass architect. And I think that relates too in terms of the racial dynamics in this country. And also too, I found it was funny because during the Democratic, not the Democratic primary, but the general election primary, Trump found out that Biden wrote supported the 1994 crime bill, and he was beating him for a while on that issue until, Biden found the correct talking point. So I think that was something that was pretty concerning too.
94 crime bill, militarizing the police, it was all there.
If we're talking about, sorry, go ahead, Sabrina.
Oh, I was going to say, and he co-wrote those crime bills with Strom Thurmond. And the interesting thing about Strom Thurmond, it just goes to show you they're just hypocrites. Because Strom Thurmond, I went to college, University of South Carolina. I saw this man's name on so many different buildings. It drove me crazy because he was a segregationist, just like Joe Biden was. And only one was Republican and one was Democrat, but they were one and the same in that sense. But a lot of people didn't know this, but Strom Thurmond had a Black daughter. Came out a couple years ago, probably about 10 years ago, it came out that she was his daughter and he was still taking care of her financially all her life, made sure she went to the best schools and everything. But that was a secret that Strom Thurmond had a Black daughter and he was a segregationist and he was racist as hell. And he co-wrote the crime bill with Joe Biden.
And I do want to
forget
add,
Senator Byrd.
Yeah, I do.
That was another one of Joe Biden's mentors.
Yep, I agree 100%. I do want to add what you said, Sabrina. Strom Thurmond wasn't just a Republican. He was also a Democrat. The reason why Strom Thurmond left the Democratic Party is after the 1964 Civil Rights Act. Then he flipped. That's why Lyndon Johnson, he said that motherfucker in his laws, in his private speeches, because he flipped. And so that's when a lot of the Dixiecrats in the South kind of left Johnson and went towards the Republican Party. So that's what I do want to add.
All right.
No, yeah, 100%.
All right. Let's wrap here. Thank you guys so much for this amazing conversation.
Can I add one thing real quick?
Of
I
course.
guess while we're on this topic, for the audience, the video, because I did a video and I went through every single president, and this was before the election, so I kind of got to it. I don't know whether it's going to be Trump or Biden, but I did both. I'm gonna link that in the comments after we finish rapping. So make sure to look for that. I got a couple of videos that tie into some of the stuff we talked about that I want to put in there. I apologize that I'm gonna spam you a bit, but I love you anyway, Franco.
Love you too, brother. Yeah, final message you guys want to leave the audience with? Starting with Savvy, what do you want to leave the audience with?
Just definitely, I think what Franco's doing here is amazing, like introducing his audience to, people like me, RJ and Marcus, and we need more of this in leftist space. We need more people collaborating, especially those of us that have smaller channels. Like we should be collaborating more often. So, definitely check us out. We're all on Twitter, as you can tell. You can find me on Twitter at SabbySabs2. It's the number 2. And you can find my channel. My channel is Sabby Sabs.
Okay, RJ.
Okay, yeah, I'm terminally online for Twitter, so you can find me at Comrade Curls. If you see the curls, you know it's me. I have a show, Revolutionary Jargon, shameless plug. You see it in the background on your screen. Also part of the Fred Hampton Leftist Network. This Friday, I'll be doing a Q&A. So I'll be going live, asking questions about any topic. And yeah, it should be fun from there. And also I'm releasing a episode Friday at midnight with your fellow Mikasa Sukasa host, Misty. So that was a great conversation. We talk about Russiagate because she gets a lot of shit from shit lips calling her a Putin buddy. So that's kind of her funny Twitter name she puts on there. So yeah, it'll be a great conversation. So check us out.
Yeah, Misty's awesome. Yeah, Marcus?
Well, I have a interview coming up with somebody actually from home. I grew up in Kansas City, and I had a friend reach out to me, so I will have a candidate for a commissioner of the 8th District in Wyandotte County, Kansas. I'll have them on Saturday night on the Political Matrix. And also, for those who don't know, on what I've been thinking with Marcus Cage channel, I have my car ride chats that I've been doing. So I have roughly about a 30-minute ride or more. So it's 5:10 p.m. Pacific. What would that be? 8:10 Eastern. And I guess figure out where you're in Mountain and Central. But I hop on for about 30 minutes. I talk about whatever different news stories, which are not the stories that are the top stories that everybody's talking about. So I try to dig out the diamonds in the rough, stuff that nobody's talking about, just to give you guys something quick to add that's a little bit different out of the norm. And on my last thing, my other channel, Hero Apologetics, where I do most of my researching and takes a lot of my time. I just released a video, very interesting video for any of those who are just interested and curious about stuff in the Bible. This will be, educational. I'm not trying to, put the hands of Jesus or anything on you. I'm just trying to give some education on some of the stuff that it says in there. The video I just released is called "What Color Was Adam, King David, and most importantly, Esau?" So that's the video I just did. I'm working on one on the Talmud coming up also. And also a certain group of people's involvement into slavery. So look out for all that stuff.
Awesome. Make sure you guys subscribe to these people's channels. It's Sabby Sabs, Fred Hampton Leftist, and Marcus's 3 channels, What's on My Mind, Political Matrix, and Hebrew Apologetics. Thank you guys so much for watching. My guests, you guys were amazing. These were important conversations. You guys brought really strong messages to them. And everybody else, make sure you guys stay informed.